Welcome to the Edgar Rice Burroughs mini podcast number 8. These mini podcasts are done to supplement the full-length podcasts that I do with Scott Stewart and Jess Terrell, in which we usually talk in depth about a particular book by Edgar Rice Burroughs. My name is Tim DeForest. I'm the author of several books about what I call pre-digital pop culture, things like pulp magazines, old-time radio, and such. And I keep a blog at Comics, Old Time Radio, and other cool stuff. You can also find my books on Amazon.com. Today, for this podcast, we're going to be talking about Tarzan the Polyglot, Tarzan the master of many languages. Because a popular conception of Tarzan, something that can be traced back to the Johnny Weissmuller movies made in the 30s and 40s, is that the Lord of the Jungle speaks in a monosyllabic me Tarzan, you Jane mode of speech. And he really isn't that bright. But Tarzan, as he's presented in the Edgar Rice Burroughs book, the real Tarzan, so to speak, he is actually a brilliant man. If he had ever taken an IQ test, there's really no doubt he would have scored at genius level. And there's a lot of indications of Tarzan's sharp intelligence scattered throughout the original novels, but one way we know how darn smart he was is his ability to learn new languages. Now, while he was being raised by his adopted mother, the she-ape Kala, he spoke the primitive language of the Mangani, the rare species of apes that took him in after his human parents died. This was indeed a human language, a primitive language rather. Edgar Rice Burroughs translated this language into words for the convenience of the readers, but it makes it clear that though there was a primitive vocabulary, this was enhanced by gestures, grunts, and clicks. But still, it is a language, and it's the first one the young Tarzan learned. Now, as a child, he found the cabin in which his human parents had lived. Here, he found a child's alphabet book and a dictionary. And it's here that we see one of the most overt examples of Tarzan's inherent genius. As a child, without any knowledge of English as a spoken language, he taught himself to read and write English. So to quote from the original novel, 1912's Tarzan of the Apes, quote, "Among the other books were a primer, some child's readers, numerous picture books, and a great dictionary. All of these he examined, but the pictures caught his fancy most, though the strange little bugs which covered the page where there were no pictures excited his wonder and deepest thought. Squatting upon his hunches on the tabletop in the cabin his father had built, his smooth, brown, naked little body bent over the book which rested in his strong, slender hands, and his great shock of long black hair falling about his well-shaped head and bright, intelligent eyes. Tarzan of the Apes, little primitive man, presented a picture filled at once with pathos and with promise, an allegorical figure of the primordial groping through the black night of ignorance towards the light of learning. His little face was tense in study, for he had partially grasped, in a hazy, nebulous way, the rudiments of a thought which was destined to prove the key and the solution to the puzzling problem of the strange little bugs. In his hands was a primer opened at a picture of a little ape similar to himself, but covered, except for the hands and face, with a strange colored fur, for such he thought of the jacket and trousers to be. Beneath the picture were 3 little bugs, B-O-Y, boy. And now he had discovered in the text upon the page that these 3 were repeated many times in the same sequence. Another fact he learned: there were comparatively few individual bugs, but they were repeated many times, occasionally alone, but more often in the company of others. Slowly he turned the pages, scanning the pictures in the text for a repetition of the combination B-O-Y. Presently he found it beneath the picture of another little ape, and a strange animal that went upon 4 legs like the jackal and resembled him not a little. Beneath this picture the bugs appeared as a boy and a dog. There they were, the 3 little bugs that always accompanied the little ape. And so he progressed, very, very slowly, for it was a hard and laborious task, which he had set for himself without knowing it, a task that might seem to you or me impossible, learning to read without having the slightest knowledge of letters or written language, or the faintest idea that such things existed. He did not accomplish it in a day, or a week, or a month, or in a year, but slowly, very slowly, he learned after he grasped the possibilities which lay in those little bugs, so that by the time he was 15, he knew the various combination of letters which stood for every pictured figure in the little primer, and one or two of the picture books. The meaning and use of the articles and conjunctions, verbs and adverbs, and pronouns, he had but the faintest conception. So, for the most part, early in his life, Tarzan spoke Mangani and could eventually read and write, but not speak English. This changed as a young adult when he rescued the French sailor Paul Darnot from cannibals. Darnot realized that Tarzan could write English without being able to speak it, though he was understandably confused at first about how this could be. He chose to teach Tarzan French. Darnot was fluent in English, but thought it would be easier to teach his native tongue. He soon realized this was a mistake because French grammar and syntax didn't match the written English Tarzan already knew. But he soldiered on, and Tarzan was soon fluent in French. He demonstrates for the first time how quickly he can pick up new languages. By the end of the first book, he also spoke English. In the second book, he added Arabic and the dialect of the African Wazari tribe to his linguistic retinue. Over the course of the total of 24 books, he encountered a number of lost civilizations, traveled to the underground world of Pellucidar, and had encounters with other European natives. In almost every book, he seemed to learn a new language. The May 5th, 2012 edition of the Language Journal, in an article written by Diane Racoma, had a list of all the languages that Tarzan had learned. I'm going to quote from the article, and I apologize in advance because I am inevitably going to mispronounce the names of some of the dialects. So, quote, based on the series, Tarzan spoke French, English, Arabic, including the dialects Gallus, Shiftus, and Calicos, German, Latin, Dutch, Portuguese, and ancient Mayan. The native dialects he spoke, or at least understood, were Wazari, the West Coast Mongrel language, Swahili, Paludan, a Pithecanthropus language, Alalus Sign language, Mannonian dialect, Bagala dialect, Bagago dialect, Gilak dialect, for those who lived in Pellucidar, a place located beneath the surface of the earth, according to Burroughs, Athni language, as an aside, that, by the way, is from Tarzan and the City of Gold, and the dialects Bansuto, Utenga, Bukina, Buru, Zuli, Kaji, Bantago, Bantu, and Babango. Tarzan also understood African drum language. So Tarzan was indeed a genius, with the ability to learn languages within a matter of weeks, being one of the most overt indications of that genius. So don't think of Tarzan, at least not the real Tarzan, as the me Tarzan, you Jane guy. He's simply not. Now that's it for this time. Once again, my name is Tim DeForest. Please visit my blog at Comics, Old Time Radio, and Other Cool Stuff, and look up my Amazon.com author page. Feel free to buy my books and make me wealthy beyond the dreams of avarice. For those of you who enjoy our podcast, please take the time to leave a review on iTunes. And keep an ear out, as always, for our full-time podcasts, which usually come out every 2 to 3 months. Thank you.